Hello everyone, welcome back to part 3 of how to be a good leader. In the last 2 videos, we started talking about the qualities that defined a good leader. Now that we finished that, we're going to go over and we're going to talk about the qualities that make up a bad leader. So the qualities of a bad leader, we're going to go ahead and get that on the board. That is what we are talking about in part 3 now. So we're going to write what are the qualities of a bad leader. Now, why is it important to talk about the qualities of a bad leader? Well, so that we can recognize them when we see them, so we have a better understanding of how they contrast with what is on the left part of the screen here, the qualities of a good leader. So we're going to see some examples and dive into just a few examples of what that looks like in real life. So the qualities of a bad leader. The first one that I would like to capitalize on, and I'm just going to go in order of the qualities of a good leader here on the right side of on the left side of the screen. We're going to write them on the right side of the screen here. So as we see on the left side, the qualities of a good leader is someone who leads themselves. So the opposite of that would be for a bad leader is somebody who does not lead themselves. So they do not lead themselves, and we're going to talk about what that looks like. So someone who does not lead themselves. So a bad leader has a mindset of, hey, everything's okay and I don't have to improve. I already have everything in order. As we see on the left side of the screen where it says that love is key, and we talked about love and what that looks like and what it is towards our fellow man. On the bad leader section, they do not operate by that principle of loving or looking out for their neighbor or for treating others how they would like to be treated. So a bad leader, they can be highly educated even. It doesn't necessarily mean when you think about someone leading themselves, we say, oh, they're very determined individuals. They have a lot of certificates. They have a lot of credentials. But a bad leader can also have a lot of credentials as well. So let's write that down in, I'm going to put this in orange here. Let's see. So they can have credentials, but the primary thing is that they are poisoning their organization, and they are trying to advance a personal agenda that they have. So they're leading themselves in a way where they are actually putting themselves first. So they are not a servant leader. So let's go over here and write that. So they can be highly educated, and I'm putting the word educated in quotations here. They can be highly educated. However, they are advancing their own agenda, but advance their own agendas. They are not looking out for the ultimate good. And the first thing that I said, which I can write down here in the second point, is that they have an attitude of that they know everything already, and they do not see a need to improve. Need to improve. Either themselves or the system overall, the organization. So they do not see a need to improve themselves or the system. They are perfectly content with being mediocre or with being bad. Even if they are bad, they would not recognize it as bad. So yeah, they're very difficult to work with in that regard. Another quality of a bad leader is that they are not motivated to do the right thing. They do not care, about the greater good. So overall, you can say that they are pretty resistant to change, and they are not disciplined. So let's write that down. They are resistant to change, and they are undisciplined. Okay. All right. Another quality of a bad leader is, if we look over to the good leader, we have that they have a good track record of success. That's a good leader. Now, on the opposite spectrum, a bad leader is somebody who has frequent failures. So let's write that down. They have frequent. And what do I mean by that? Frequent failures. Is it somebody who is trying their hardest and they're out there doing something new and they're failing at it because it's new? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm talking about. What I am saying is that a bad leader is characterized by somebody who is not learning from their past mistakes. They keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and they clearly have an attitude of, they don't care. So we can summarize that by saying they are not learning from past mistakes. They're not trying to learn from the past mistakes. Let's say that. They're not learning from past mistakes. Neither are they trying to learn. Okay. So we live in a universe, that operates within the law of cause and effect. So, if you're in a leadership position and, you can have the best heart, you can have the best intentions, but, if the processes are not going well, if you are frequently not meeting deadlines, if there is no accountability and the actions and mistakes that you're making are frequent, and you've been doing this job for, a relatively long amount of time, then this is a job or a position that is not good for you. Because again, if we look at and review the qualities of a good leader that we talked about, they are able to, or they are good at what they do. Right over here in point C on the left-hand side of the screen, a good leader has a good sense of time management and priority, and they are knowledgeable. So they can do their job well and they meet deadlines. Whereas a bad leader, they do not do their job well, they do not meet deadlines, and they overall have an attitude of it. They just really don't care. But if you're in that situation, then the job that you're doing is probably a bit too difficult for you. You might want to consider something else, but even if you have a good heart, that will just not be the position, because, we do have to consider the objective at hand and the overall job that we have to get done. So the second point that we can put here underneath point B, underneath a bad leader, is that they cannot perform their job well. So, they're always, missing deadlines. They don't have any sense of accomplishment. They don't have a general discipline to get things done. Generally a bad leader, when they think about, when they think about training, they will look at themselves and, they will think that they're just, fine. And they know they're not the greatest, but they'll just kind of say, oh, no, I don't need training, leave that for someone else. We're going to get into that with part D, is that they're not humble. That produces a lot of toxicity within the workplace. And that also trickles down into the rest of the company. All right, moving on. The next quality of a bad leader is that they are not focused, and they are lacking discipline, and they are also not effective. So let's write that down here. They are not focused, Because we see on the left-hand side that a good leader right over here is that they have a good sense of time management and priority. But a bad leader is not focused and they lack discipline. And they are not effective. Okay. And the main thing when it comes to being effective and discipline, the main thing that's underlying that is patience. And we talked about that earlier and how that ties into resilience with a good leader. So we can add patience into this category as well. So they are not patient. A part of having focus is being patient. Patience and focus are also highly interlinked, just like patience and resilience are very interlinked. Another quality underneath this is that they have poor management skills with both themselves and with others. So poor self-management and that ties into point A right here, is that they do not lead themselves. And poor team management. Okay. Let me erase that comma after management there. I thought I had a third point to add to that. Okay. So all of these qualities that we're going to express, and the qualities of a bad leader, again, the opposite of that is just, they don't have love. And the opposite of that is they really don't care. It's a lack of love. It's actually can be a hatred. Maybe not even that strongly, but there's just the mediocrity. They don't care about improving, and they don't care about others. They do not have good communication. They are not resilient. They do not have integrity. They are not team people. They are not a team player, and they have bad social skills, and they do not have strong people skills either. There is a video clip that I would like to play for you. It is very short. It's about 3 or 4 minutes long. And I believe it is a promo for the book Rising Against the Toxic Workplace. Rising Against the Toxic Workplace by Gary Chapman. It is a book that I mentioned earlier, but I am not endorsing the book, neither am I endorsing Gary Chapman by playing this clip. But I just wanted you guys to see, this type of bad leadership in action and what that looks like. There's another video that I will share after this as well that many of you may have seen, but it's very powerful because it will help us to understand what people are going through, and it will help us to have a deeper insight and deeper empathy for people, and to try to get a bigger picture of why people are usually exhibiting qualities of being a bad leader and why they view life the way that they do and how that has an effect on others. So let's go over here and play the first video. I apologize for any background noise that you guys may be hearing. It sounds like there's a motorcycle show outside or something. Alright, let's watch the video.
No, I saw the story. Right. I have her number. I will call her. by noon.
Yes, by noon.
I need it by noon. You got it? Good.
No, I clearly said no cream.
Well, I'll take care of that.
I'm gonna give this for free, right? Because you're wasting everything's time.
I'll talk to the manager.
So now you're gonna waste more time. Go do it. Just get it done. Go, go.
She's so lame.
Open your eyes, lady!
Something easy to fix, or it could be something that we need to talk about later.
Number one, you don't get the customer's order wrong. Number two, hey, you listening? You don't get the customer's order wrong.
Would you like my watch? It'll tell you when noon comes around so you know when I need my story. Like I told you 4 hours ago. Here, put it on.
No, Craig, I don't want your watch. I told you I'm just waiting for one more confirmation and...
I don't want excuses. I need my story.
I understand, but there's this one lady I'm
I don't want excuses, all right? I just want results.
I can't print this. You think I can print this? Go back and get me at least one confirmation before I put this gossip in my newspaper!
Can you get me a skinny Charlie with mint?
A what?
Really?
Oh, great, there you are. There are pencil shavings like all over my floor in here. Could you get those for me? Thanks.
Okay, so that was the video. Again, this was a book by Gary Chapman, Rising Above a Toxic Workplace. You guys are free to, click the link down in the description if you want to buy this book. I will leave a link right there for you. However, this video is not so much about the book, though it is very helpful, but this is just kind of getting an idea of that trickle down effect, that when you have somebody who is, in a higher position and they are just really difficult, and they're under pressure, because usually there's somebody who's pressuring them. There is this, it's kind of like a pyramid, if you can visualize it in your head there. Everything that's happening at the top will eventually fall down, and then other people start being very, mean and nasty. That is definitely a potential and a common thing that happens within those types of toxic work environments with those types of people. So the other video that I would like to show is going to be right here, so we can just take a minute to watch that. This is a video that I'm about to play that will help you to open your eyes to see just how important it is to not be so quick to judge people's hearts, or to judge people just by the outside appearance, and to be very slow and to be patient, to be slow to consider things, and to realize that, many of the things that we are pressured to do in life are perhaps not as important as we think they are, that there is something that is a lot more important, and that is people. That is love. Love is the most important and principal thing. So let's watch this video here.
kid. Every time I'm pulling out, he's right there. Man, and someone needs to talk to his parents. If they're ever at home. What is up with the traffic today? And always, every day, this intersection's always crowded. I hate pulling out of here. I need some of these dumb roads. Oh, there's... Okay, so I'm not even here. Right. Great lady. The princess of parking. Oh, sure. Take the spot. Way to be considerate. Oh, you kidding me? Unbelievable. Oh.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's about time. Let's see, what do I want?
Yeah, could I add a cookie to that order? Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, no problem, only guy in the world. I'm sure you need your cookie. The world, your oyster, and he's serving your cookie.
Thanks, sir. Thank you so much. What can I get for you?
Yeah, I'll have a tall decaf macchiato.
Yeah, sure, no problem. $3.85. And it might take a few minutes here. We've got quite a line, obviously, and thanks for your patience.
Great. Yeah, great. Great for me. Winning again. Unbelievable. What? What is... What is that? What in the world? What am I supposed to do? How can I do anything about that? Can I even help with that? I don't...
Your coffee, sir.
Oh. I can't take this anymore. I gotta get out of here.
Hey, watch it.
Sorry, so sorry.
Hey, buddy, come here.
All right. Wasn't that a very, very beautiful video? Do you remember what it said on the outside of the eyeglass case? It said, "Get service." Did you get that right? Get service. And that is to be paralleled to the servant leadership that we see over here on the qualities of a good leader on point F here. A good leader is a servant. Get service. So I can actually put that over here on the left hand side. I can write get, I'm right here on point F, get service. Yes, I'll put an exclamation point right there. If you want to hear more about what servant leadership is, and if you haven't watched part 2, you can go back and listen to that right here in part F. You can just go ahead and fast forward the video into part F and then listen to what servant leadership is just a bit. That gets into the next point on what are our qualities of a bad leader. And what are some things that you noticed about the guy in the car in the beginning of the second video? Did we notice that did he have a humble spirit, and was he giving people the benefit of the doubt? No, he was not giving people the benefit of the doubt. He was acting like a know-it-all. So we'll type that down here, write that down. They are know-it-alls. So at the beginning of the video, the actor was a bad leader. He exhibited a lot of those qualities. And what do we mean by the phrase know-it-all in this context? Well, we can say that they nitpick workers. A bad leader is somebody who nitpicks others. They nitpick their workers rather than helping them to succeed. So let's write that down. They nitpick and criticize, or I should say judge, workers and others rather than helping. So they do not give people the benefit of the doubt. They're very quick to draw conclusions about people that are just based on negativity without any proof. They are automatically quick to assume the worst, usually, about people. So I can actually add on to that. Assume, let me add a plus sign right there so that won't be so confusing. Or actually, I can just branch on to that. They assume the worst. Assume worst. Instantly. Just automatically. That's just their default, is they're automatically assuming the worst about everything. And as we learned in the first and second videos, we never want to be like that, because we never know exactly what other people are going through. And we can make things worse, and we don't want to do that. We want to be a good leader. This video is about how to be a good leader. So we want to go through life without judging people and without judging events and, things that happen so quickly. We want to be slow to consider things, and then, sit down and take the time to weigh on things, and then meditate on them, and then come to a conclusion about a matter, rather than just, assuming the worst right off the bat about everything. Another word for a know-it-all is a narcissist. So we can write down that they are narcissistic. And they have a superiority complex, so let's include that in there as well. superiority complex, Plex. They have a superiority complex, and so they are also very prideful, so I will include that in there as well. They are prideful. They have a certain image that they want to maintain, and it is usually an image that is fake. So let me include that in the third point. They are putting up a false reality. They operate by false realities. I'll put in parentheses a fake image. Oh, they are wearing a mask. They don't tell the truth. And we're going to get into that a little bit more as well. A fourth point underneath know-it-alls, and it can be summarized by narcissistic, but a bad leader does not listen to advice, and they are actually threatened by advice, so they are defensive. We can write down defensive. Defensive and threatened by advice. Now, this can be due to a lot of reasons. A bad leader, they can probably be very stressed out. They can be insecure. That's why they're defensive, because of their insecurity. They can create this false reality or this fake image. They're afraid that people won't like them very much if they really showed the world just how small they really were. So they're afraid of being judged. So they don't have a sense of security. And if you are listening to this video and you struggle with that, just know that there are a lot of people who struggle with that very same thing, and you don't have to remain that way. The way to overcome that is to first take ownership. That's one of the keys of being a good leader, is taking ownership and be aware of how much that you do not know. Be honest with yourself. A good leader is honest. They have integrity. That is point H right over here on the left-hand side of a good leader. And on top of that, they are humble, point D. So you have to be aware of how much you don't know and take responsibility, DI, right here on the left. And accountability for your actions and your mistakes in the past. Own up to that so that they won't haunt you anymore. And then, from then on, practice integrity. Do the right thing even when no one is looking. Tear down those false images and those fake images that you want other people to know you by. We all have a past and we all make mistakes. But the thing is that we have to learn from our mistakes. And that is the primary determiner of a good leader, is that they take responsibility. Again, DI right here on the screen, for their actions. They own up to their mistakes. They are humble. And that ties overall into J on the left-hand side of the screen, the growth mindset. That is how you have a growth mindset. In order to grow, you have to first realize that you are not where you need to be. Because a seed, when it is planted, has not yet grown into a tree. The seed has a goal to grow, so it will take time, and it will take several different steps for that seed to blossom into that tree over time. It will not happen overnight, but it will take time, and you have to be patient, which is another key right here in point E, is resilience. You have to be resilient and patient with yourself and with others. Okay? I think we can move on into point E right now for the quality of a bad leader. So we have so far that somebody who does not lead themselves, they have frequent failures, aka not learning from the past mistakes, and they are not focused, they lack discipline, and they are not effective at what they do. And on point D, they are know-it-alls. The next point is that they are not a team player. Actually, let me take that one down a little bit more. What I mean by that is move that down, because I kind of want to be in step with what's going on the left-hand side of the screen here. So I guess our next point can be something like, they are not resilient. So that will be the next point. Point E is they are not resilient. Okay. In order to have resilience, you have to have healthy thoughts, and you also have to have a goal in mind. So, generally, as we talked about resilience and patience earlier with the qualities of a good leader, we can include that here as well, is that they are not patient. Patience does not exist with a bad leader. So they are not patient. They do not think healthy thoughts towards themselves or others, or primarily towards others, because they can be also very narcissistic and think only good thoughts and the best things towards themselves, and then just totally, mess up or distort the image of others in their head so that they can feel more superior and powerful, because they are trying to make up for that insecurity, perhaps, that they feel deep, deep, deep down. And the opposite side of the coin for the good leader will be in point I, whereas a good leader can handle pressure, a bad leader cannot, or they break under pressure. That will be the bad quality. Breaks under pressure. How do we handle pressure? How does somebody handle pressure when you have somebody who is, just like in the first video that we saw, we have perhaps a CEO, is barking and, giving orders to the manager, and then the manager is calling the lady at the coffee shop and yelling at her, probably because he's getting yelled at. Now, he may not be getting yelled at, but perhaps he has a deadline that he has to meet, and he feels like his staff is incompetent. So they believe that in order, or the best way to handle problems is by yelling and by demeaning and putting other people down, and they don't realize that that has a absolutely detrimental effect on the workplace. It has a terrible effect on people's mindsets and on their attitudes towards others, their attitudes towards the boss, the leader in charge. And it just makes the world a much, darker place when people are behaving that way, because they are so wrapped up in their own lives and their own paycheck or what other people think about them, rather than the greater good, which is, again, the quality of a good leader, is that they recognize the greater good. They seek to do what is right for others. They always want the best for others. So a bad leader is not resilient, and they usually break under pressure, and that pressure is oftentimes 90% of the times coming from what people think of them. It's not so much about the data or meeting a deadline, or so to speak. It's about them being able to either keep their job or maintain an image. And it's usually, I can probably roughly say 40% of the time, 30 to 40%, is something arbitrary. And it's something very self-centered that they're trying to maintain. Now, each and every context is different, so, we can't know everything that's going on. You just have to try to get to know your own workplace and, really understand the temperature of your workplace and understand how things operate. Try to see what the board is like. Try to see who the managers are and the people above your boss, if your boss is particularly mean. Try to understand and search out these things for yourself. And I guarantee you that, a lot of the times, it is somebody above them, or there's usually a chain of events that's happening, that's causing people to break under pressure. Or there could be something at home, there can be so many things that make people a bad leader. Maybe, there's a lack of education, or again, a lot of times, as I was talking about earlier, they have not learned how to solve problems or how to manage themselves emotionally, because their parents themselves, when they were young, did not model that for them. They were yelled at, and they were demeaned, and they were ridiculed and criticized. So then the child grows up into believing that is the way that they solve problems as well. So that is a quality that a bad leader would have. And with that knowledge for how it typically happens, that way you can usually prevent it. You can find ways to prevent that just by knowing how that happens. So point F can be contrasted by the fact that they are not a team player, because that is the opposite of being a servant leader. They are not a team player. Perhaps they do not see the need to be a team player because, they are in a leadership position, or maybe they're not in a leadership position. Perhaps they just, don't like people very much. They have bad attitudes towards people typically because they themselves have been hurt in the past, and perhaps in such a work environment, if it is a toxic work environment, they do not feel any hope within that system. They do not feel like they have a voice. They feel like they are hitting a brick wall. Therefore, they many people can kind of just become shut-ins, and, they retreat into themselves and they become negative because they feel that no one cares about them. And this is why it is so important to be a good leader, because again, we set the temperature, we set the example for our coworkers, we set the example for the community and for our customers, with the type of attitude, that we put on every day, that we have every day, and the love that we have for people, sincere love, sincerity. And people will see that, and it will have a greater impact on our community and society at large. So overall, not being a team player just damages the atmosphere overall. There are so many ways that, not being a team player damages the self-esteem of others and of the company, and it leaves people out. I'm not going to make a list on the whiteboard, on the board here, but I think you guys get the idea. I probably don't have to go into more about how not being a team player will affect the culture of the workplace. If you want to hear more of that, just go back to part 2 and where I talk about servant leadership, and you can contrast that with how not being a team player, how that will have the opposite effect. Just to summarize, they will not make others feel important. They do not help others feel supported, and they do not value other people. When you're not a team player, you also care more about the numbers and the deadlines more than the people, so you become very toxic. And you also do not pay attention to your teammates and their own needs, and you do not pay attention to the consumers as well. I'm just contrasting the servant leadership qualities here with the not being a team player on the right hand side there. So that is what it looks like for a bad leader, is they overall create an environment of toxicity and fear and shutting down communication and just poor self-expression and just everything else. Okay, moving on, is that a bad leader is not good at communication. So let's write that down here in point E. They are bad at communication. Now, poor communication can take so many different qualities in and of itself. One way that poor communication, and this is what I've seen so many times, when we think about poor communication, we kind of just think of somebody who just locks up and just doesn't know how to communicate, or, they're really shy, they don't know how to put their thoughts together very well, they don't speak very clearly, they're not focused. But in a workplace, you can have a bad leader, or should I say, you can have a good leader, but they can have bad communication in the light of that they are too afraid of stepping on people's toes. So what they do is they are not clear, and they are not concise, and they are not direct. Not being clear, concise, and direct is in and of itself bad communication. So let's write that down here, and the point underneath E is that they are not clear, concise, and direct for whatever reason. So they are not clear, concise, or direct. Because I see a lot of bosses who are just very sweet, but they are so afraid of stepping on people's toes and not being liked, that their communication is just really bad, and they're not taking care of the critical issues that need to be addressed. So they just kind of sweep it under the rug. And again, that's enabling. I mentioned that earlier in part 2 about enabling, and we never want to do that. So they are not taking the authority that they have been given as a leader, that you naturally have, I should say, as a leader. So they are, I don't want to use the word weak. That's not when I use the word weak here, I'm going to use it, but just know that is not putting someone down. It's just an adjective to describe what someone who was not able to handle pressure. So again, going back to point E, which is resilience. So that's what I mean by weak, is somebody who is not able to handle that pressure. They are not resilient, when the going gets tough. I'm going to separate 1 and 2 here, and I'm going to put in 2 that they are not taking charge. Not taking charge. And I'm going to put slash responsibility. Not exercising their authority. I'm going to put that in point 1. Not exercising authority. Or should I say authority properly? I'm going to put properly in parentheses. You can exercise your authority, but you can do that in such a bad way where it creates, it creates even more problems, and it starts fires within the workplace that, your employees will have to put out every single day. And because your employees are constantly putting out the fires that a bad leader creates, there is no room for productivity and there is no room for growth, because the leader is not taking responsibility for the things that they need to be responsible for. So all of those things in turn begin to fall in the hands and on the shoulders of the workers, and even sometimes within the community or in the customers as well. Have you ever gone to a restaurant, for example, and you sat down at a table and the table was dirty? What's going on with that? And they're sitting you down at a dirty table, and there's just dishes everywhere, and you're like, what is going on here? And you hear screaming in the background. Maybe you have never had an experience like that in a restaurant, but I think each of us have been at the hand of, we have experience being in a restaurant where things were just not, people just were not on top of things the way that they should have been. And I'm talking about major things like, getting dishes dirty, or, constantly getting the wrong menu being brought out, or even a lot of times the wrong meal. So when things like that happen, the employees, the people who are, you can say, at the bottom of the rank or at the position, are the ones who have to pick up the slack, and they are overworked and tired. And then, because they are overworked and tired, and because the responsibilities are not evenly distributed amongst the staff, they are now performing poorly because they are not getting the encouragement or the understanding or the evenly distributed workload that they should have. And a lot of times, one of the main things and the reasons why this has happened is, 1, because of bad communication, and 2, because people cannot trust each other within the workplace. There are several other reasons why things like that happen, but those are the primary 2 that I have noticed, that I have observed with this. Another example of being bad at communication is that you have people or leaders who are critical, that they are criticizing, they bicker, and they are unable to give support. So let's write that down. They are unable to give support or encouragement to staff or to others in general, because they have poor people skills. Now, this does not mean that they have to go over and start, calling people names, and this does include that. But this can just be a simple someone who does not know how to encourage people in general, or who doesn't know how to support someone when they have a need. This is also a sign of a bad leader, is that they are bad, they have bad communication and they're not a team player. They do not have those strong people skills that a good leader would require in order to lead a person or a group of people. So they have a understanding of people in general. Now, if you have a boss who is bad at communication, and as I mentioned earlier, like they're putting people down, they're criticizing them, they're calling them bad names, They're making them feel, just like they're worthless, just like in the video that we saw where the boss was taking off his watch and telling the employee, the female who was sitting at the desk, I needed this story at 12 o'clock. Do you understand what 12 o'clock is? And he took off his watch and put it on her. How demeaning is that? That is bad communication. He was trying to get a point across to her, but he was treating her as if she did not understand. He did not take the time to hear her. He just said, no excuses, yada, yada, yada. I just need the story, at this time. You need to get it done. If this is a recurring theme for this employee, then that's different. But I think the point of the video is that you don't want to undermine people. You always want to take time to understand. And what he did was totally unnecessary. That was very demeaning. That was very, very demeaning. You never, ever want to treat people that way. You always want to be patient and understanding. And you want to listen to them and make them feel supported. And, understand that we're all in this together. There is absolutely no need for that type of response. So that is a bad communicator, and that is an example of that. The point of communication is to make sure that things are understood, is to make sure that others understand something that you are trying to convey. The point of communication is ultimately understanding. So we can go about that in a positive way or a negative way. Using negative teaching methods such as humiliation to try to get someone to understand is a horrible, horrible way to work with people. And it actually produces a lot more problems than it does fixing that one problem, because you are creating a lot more fires and a lot more self-esteem problems, and you're creating fear and just so much more. You're adding to that initial issue that the person had, and you're just making things far worse, because now they may not be able to focus if you are humiliating people, if you are calling them out of their name and bullying them and controlling them in some way. Your employees are not able to be free around you, and they are not able to focus. You have created an environment of fear and not an environment of open expression where people are free to bring their concerns and their problems to you. Because we, as a team, if we're working, for the greater good or for a company, we all have to be able to identify problems, and we all have to be able to attack those problems and not each other. We have to deal with the issues at hand, the fires that are being created, or it doesn't matter how they came about, but we have to be able to get on top of these things and put out those fires, put out those problems that keep surfacing within the company. If you have an employee who is frequently, missing the deadline for a story, I'm just using that as an example because that was in the video, and you need the story at 12 o'clock and they're just not getting it, how about shifting that employee, to a different department and getting somebody else to take their spot, or perhaps even try to get them training. You have to get to understand people, Usually people, they don't want to do a bad job. They work hard to get to the job that they are in many times. They have worked very hard. Usually. And if this is a person, if this is something new and they are usually not under pressure like that, they have to be encouraged to get to the next step. You, if you're a good leader, will help them to get to that next step. You will help them to realize that they have the potential within themselves to get that thing done and to confront whatever problem it is that's holding them back from getting that story written at 12 o'clock every day. You will listen to them if they're having a problem at home, or if, they're just overworked with, the things that are going on at the job. You need to try to help them to work through that so that they can rise above, and that you will have an even stronger team because you have taken the time to invest in your team, in your coworkers, rather than viewing them as incompetent imbeciles. You actually care about them, and they will see that, and they will not be afraid, because that is one of the qualities on the left hand side of the screen underneath a good leader, is that a good leader is not afraid to invest in their team or their employees and customers. So that is critical. I know I'm spending a long time talking about this one particular point, but it is just so important to really understand. And okay, let's go on. I want to try to speed this up. I just realized that I put an E instead of a G there. Let me go ahead and fix that. I did that because I was looking at the word resilient, and I was looking at point E and making that connection there in my mind, and that's why I put that E right there. Okay, so let's go on to point number H, and the contrast for that is that they are actually very immoral. They can be immoral. They are immoral. Now, when we think about what it means to be immoral, we may, sometimes think about, this extreme, like, devil with red horns and just, just cackling, and it's just like, wow, I'm going to take over the universe. It's like this immoral, just a really wicked person, like a mass murderer or something like that. Like, when we hear the word immoral, those are the kinds of extremes that our minds have a tendency to go to. But in this context, an immoral person is somebody who does not understand what it means to have a code, a moral code that they are consistent with. With bad leadership, what I usually see is that you have somebody, and I mentioned this earlier, is that they are two-faced. They put on one mask and they want to show you who they are, an image of who they are. That goes into the false reality and DI right here underneath the qualities of a bad leader. But we can write down that they are dishonest. So when you think of someone who is immoral, you can think of all of the pretty much the sins that people do openly, the things that really have a serious effect on a company, such as dishonesty. So dishonest. They are dishonest about the need to take care of problems. They don't tell the truth about certain things. They lie about numbers. This is a bad leader. And when you're lying about things, that's going to catch up with you. And not only is it bad because people are not going to be able to trust you, you're going to get caught. No matter what, you will get caught. If it is not here on this earth, you will get caught in the next, because, God sees everything. No one is getting away with anything, and that is why the justice system exists. And it is also the law of cause and effect. If you lie, then what's going to happen? Well, you just created yourself a faulty foundation. If you started your company or a business on a lie, then eventually that thing is going to fall because it was founded on a faulty foundation. It was not founded upon truth. And eventually that's going to catch up with you. And I'm just going to summarize this by they do not have a moral code, or should I say consistent moral code. There's a lot of hypocrisy going on. So they do not, I'm just going to write no consistent moral code or ethics. I'm just going to put that /ethics. Okay. I think we all know what it means to be immoral. I don't think I have to go too deeply into that. So let me zoom out here so that I can continue writing. Before I do that, I think I can also add on to dishonest. I can just add the word not trustworthy. They are not trustworthy. I remember, I have a short story to tell. When I was in high school, I had my first job as a computer repair technician. And at the place that I was working at, it was a very toxic environment. The the adults who were in charge of us, they were very cruel. They were very mean, and they would just be very disrespectful to us because we were younger, and they were just constantly barking orders and putting us down, and they were just very harsh and cold. And it created an environment of fear. I was afraid to go to work after school for the longest time when I was 14, 15 years old, because I was afraid of these guys. But I loved my work so much. I loved what I did, that I was passionate about it. And unfortunately, there was one time when somebody had dropped off a laptop at this place, and I went over and I took the laptop and I said, okay, they were looking for a repair, so I gave them the repair slip and everything, and I can't remember exactly what happened, but I took the laptop and I put it in the service place, and I put it in the bag underneath the cubicle where we usually put the laptops to be repaired. I was going to work on that later and return it back to the person. Now, about an hour later, one of the directors, he was a manager, he came over and he was yelling, everyone, like, who took did somebody bring the laptop in from, so-and-so? Like, did somebody bring that in here? No. He was just really angry, and, and I was absolutely afraid, of getting in trouble, because I had no idea, that I wasn't supposed to take that laptop. They didn't communicate that, but that was just the environment that they set. I was very afraid of getting yelled at and, put down. As soon as they, talked about how we weren't supposed to take it, I had learned my lesson right then and there. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm never doing that again. How was I supposed to know? They didn't say, don't take the laptop from this customer, because they, did something. I don't know. I can't remember. It was so long ago. So, unfortunately, I did not fess up that I had put the laptop in the place to be repaired, because I was afraid of getting yelled at and humiliated in front of the whole team for taking the laptop. And honestly, if I was extremely wounded at that time emotionally, so if somebody yelled at me at that time, I would actually start crying, and that was just even more embarrassing because, I didn't like being yelled at. I tried really hard, to do the right thing at all times, and it was just, very dehumanizing. So, yeah, I didn't fess up to it, and I was just like, okay, let me just get the laptop out. I'm going to fix it, and I did fix it. But I just took it there, left it there, and, I had a plan that I was just going to come back and fix it and return it to the person. I just wasn't thinking it through. I was being dishonest. I didn't fess up to the fact that I had put it there. So a couple of hours later, at the end of the day, they were having a party, a staff party. I think it was something for, I don't know what it was for. It was a party. And then after the party, they called me in, and the supervisor and the manager and the other manager was there, and they said that they had turned on the security cameras and they saw me taking a laptop and putting it under the repair desk. And then they asked me, how come, why didn't I tell them that I had put the laptop under there? And I just started crying, and, I was trying to tell them that I was afraid of, them humiliating me and just, being just really cruel to me, and they were already yelling. I didn't want to get yelled at more and dehumanized, so that's why I just, I didn't want to speak up in that moment. And it was a very humiliating moment, because I was just crying and crying and crying, and it was just really bad. So, yeah, that was my very first job when I was 15 years old, as a computer repair tech. And fortunately, they did not let me go. They definitely had a right to, but they did not like me after that. And in their eyes, I was not trustworthy. And no, at the time, I was not, because I was very weak. I did not communicate. that what I had done. I did not communicate that. I did not take charge and responsibility, even though I would have been yelled at. I should have told them. So I was definitely in the wrong there. But we can also see the flip side of that coin for how when you are a toxic person, when you have a toxic work environment and you're constantly humiliating people and putting them down and bullying people. This company that I worked for, they had a huge reputation for just being really nasty, the people. And there were so many people who quit because of this one particular manager who worked there. People were constantly feeling just really, really bad. And I was on the receiving end of that many times. And I did confront the leadership in the past about that, but they, just kind of justified it and, tried to brush it off. And they're just saying, oh, we're just having fun. So they were very narcissistic. But, that's kind of what that looks like, in real life there. I still feel very bad about that to this day. But, I've certainly matured since then. And, that is an example that we can learn from. I've gone through so many other examples like that. After age 14 or 15, however old I was, 14 or 15, when I first had that job where I was a business administrator and I had to work with some very, very difficult people. And, there were things that I knew that I was going to get yelled at for. And these people, they were also very unreasonable. But the thing is that other people knew that and they saw that, so they left me alone. And I actually got about 3 promotions because I stood my ground and I was honest. And, even though they yelled at me and tried to, demeaned me and even used foul language, in that workplace, towards me and at me, I did not crumble. And I grew from that experience there. So I hope that motivates you if you are in a similar situation. I say that so that you can kind of see how that works and, understand the energy and the spirit behind that immoral leadership. When people are bad leaders, what that looks like in the workplace and how that has an effect on people. How it had an effect on myself, for example, when I was a young teenager. Trying to avoid being humiliated and put down and name called and stuff like that. Okay, let's go ahead and get through these. I think there are 2 more that I will go through, is that they are insecure. The next one is point I. And instead of being a team player, they are a bully, usually. And, that goes into the example that I just said right now, my own example about how we had bullies as managers. But bully/insecure. Let's see. So somebody who was a bully and insecure, or somebody who's not a team player, they do not realize dependence upon others. So we can write that here. They do not realize the importance of working as a team and respecting your team. So they do not, let's get rid of that, do not realize the importance of respect and dependence upon one another. Okay, so again, overall, they're a bully. They are not a team player. They don't really care about respecting others. And because they don't respect others, generally, they don't get any respect in return. Or they try to get a false sense of respect in return. What do I mean by that is it is a manipulated type of respect. It is a fear. So people fear them because they're a bully, because they do not have the qualities, the good qualities to make up a good leader, which would otherwise be trust. They don't want to get respect the right way. They want to bully, which is not respect at all. It's fear. But it looks like respect. People are just afraid of, poking the bear, so to speak. They don't want to poke the bear. They don't want to ruffle this bad leader's feathers because they know they're going to get that stick at the end. They're going to get the short end of the stick. So one of the second things that we can put underneath being a bully and insecure is that they often use humiliation and force. Or force is a strong word. We can say that they use manipulation. Okay, so they use manipulation and or humiliation, just like that guy did in the video. I cannot spell right now. Ation. They use manipulation and humiliation as a tool to provoke and divide the staff. Okay. You often see this in environments, and this is a huge one. A lot of you guys are going to be like, oh my gosh, when I say this. But you often see this when you have the people with the credentials who are lording over the people who don't have credentials. So you have the credentials lording over the non-credentialed. So let's write that down. Credentialed. Lording over non-credentialed. So there's a superiority complex there. There's no respect for anyone. You know, we went to this college and we were in this fraternity, and you know, our parents are so and so and such, and we're a part of this group, and you guys didn't do this, and we're better than you. And you know, they may not say that, but that's what they're communicating with their actions. You know, we've done this, we've done that. You know, we have this, we have that. Who are you? You're nobody. That is toxicity. And if you want to be a good leader and a good team player, you always want to value your people and know that everyone, every human being, every person who has a heart, a beating heart, they are valuable. And you never ever want to put someone down because they didn't have the, you know, they didn't do what you did, or they didn't go to whatever school or fraternity, or they don't know such and such. And, you know, you're pretty much saying that they don't have any value because they haven't done these worldly things. Every human being has value. Every person is made in the image of God, and it is our job to love our neighbor. We have to treat others the way that we want to be treated. That is what being a servant leader is all about. We have to make others feel important, and we have to know that they are important and valued, and they are a part of this team, because we, you know, if we're the manager or the CEO, we have hired them to be a part of this team because we saw potential. And, you know, they may have not had everything, but we saw that potential. And, you know, we can't lose sight of that. We have to have a goal in mind. And, you know, we can't bully and make people feel, you know, less than because, you know, we are trying to maintain a social status, you know, amongst our friends. If your friends are like that, then they're not good friends to be around, and they are actually probably making your work environment and your company worse. So you may need to let go of people if you are keeping company with such people where, you know, they feel like they're just the best, and, you know, all these other people are just nobody, and, you know, that's not right. That is not how we create a culture of trust and of productivity and of growth. And just one last thing that I will say on this point, for point I, is that they use manipulation and or humiliation as a tool to provoke and divide the staff. Usually very insecure people, they want to divide and conquer because they want to feel powerful. So a bad leader, and this is something that Hitler did, you know, he divided the two groups. You know, it was us against them. He had this us against them mentality. And you can see that in so many work environments. It is crazy. If you sit down and you understand and just get to, you know, see the temperature of a certain company, there should never be this us versus them mentality. Because, you know, we're all we're all in this together. And, you know, that is something that if you have a company or an organization that is doing that, it's going to fall pretty soon, you know, in the next couple of years, because, you know, they're not going to be able to have a good steady income. You know, nobody's going to want to work there. People are going to be quitting up, down, left, and right. You know, they're going to have a high turnover rate. You know, there is nothing stable. So you always want to have a firm foundation. And that foundation, again, is founded within love. Okay. Yes, love. Love what you do and love people. Okay, let me zoom out here a little bit, and we are going to get to the last point here, is point J. And that is that they do not have a growth mindset. A bad leader does not have a growth mindset. No growth. Actually, let me capitalize that. Mindset. I apologize that my pen is kind of like bleeding a little bit, if you want to call that. Like, there's little lines and stuff everywhere. I should be getting a new tablet soon, but yeah, let's continue. So a bad leader does not have a love and appreciation for learning. And if they do have a love and appreciation for learning, it's probably for some twisted ulterior motive, because they are insecure perhaps and they want to make other people like them. You know, they don't really love learning because they love people and want to help them. It's because they want to be liked by people, or they want to live some, you know, they want to lead a legacy. You know, it's a very selfish underlying reason. So they do not have a love and appreciation for learning. And the next point underneath that is neither do they care about people. And or I can say the conditional statement is that if they do, it is all about either them trying to get ahead. It is to promote a personal or a selfish goal or agenda / agenda. Alright, guys, I don't think I need to explain that further. That is pretty clear. You know, you always want to have a growth mindset. You always want to have the understanding and the perspective that it is not about us. It is not, this life is not always about us. It's not about, you know, getting the big fancy cars and, you know, having to be able to go to golf games and stuff every weekend, or, you know, taking vacations, and, you know, these things fade. The most important thing that will last, however, it is love, and it is leaving a positive legacy in this world. And a growth mindset, because a bad leader is not resilient, because they do not like the idea of being uncomfortable, because being uncomfortable, it kind of threatens their weak ego, or their ego, I should say. It threatens their ego, and that idea of being uncomfortable, it is something that they, how do I word this, do not take pleasure in. Because a bad leader is somebody who is very ecclesiastical, meaning that they want to feel, you know, good all of the time, and anything that doesn't make them feel good, they don't want to do it. And that is a very, very, very immature way to go about life, because we know that no pain equals no gain. So we have to have that mindset that if, you know, we're trying to learn something new, you know, it's going to take some pain to get there. And, you know, that means that that's our brain making new connections. If it's painful, if we're learning something new, a good leader understands that, and they will always grow. And, you know, they realize that in life, you know, things are challenging because they are new. That's just the way it is. We are always growing and evolving as human beings in terms of our knowledge and our understanding and our wisdom, and so much more. And a bad leader will not care about change. They do not care about growth. They are content where they are because they have the little things that they have to make them feel good in that moment. And that is not good, because that will produce really bad fruit in a person's life, really bad consequences overall. So yes, let's be a good leader. And again, if you are listening to this, you are a leader because you are setting an example in some way. Whether it be through your actions, through your speech, as I've said earlier, through the examples that you set to people every day, you are a leader. If you are a parent, you're a leader. If you're a teacher, you're a leader. If you're a bus driver, you're a leader. If you're a janitor, you're a leader. And just imagine, I want you to imagine and visualize the type of company, if you are a CEO or an employee listening, an employee, or if you're a manager even listening to this, a CEO, what you should understand is that if you currently do not have this system, if the things that I'm talking about are very new to you, and you're thinking like in your head, oh man, I could never have that, or I can never be that type of person. The stuff that I've done, it's too much for me to try to reverse at this point. I'm already, at the stage right now in my life and in my career, and I just can't get there. What I want you to do is imagine in your mind right now the type of job that you want to have, the type of employee relationships that you want to have. Imagine that, visualize that in your mind right now. From the things such as, what does it look like when people come in the morning? What does the environment look like? What is the type of attitude, attitudes that people have? What types of things that are people saying? How are people getting things done? What does the team environment look like? How are people talking to each other? How are people handling problems? How are you helping people to solve those problems? Just imagine that in your head. What is that looking like right now? How are people asking for help? And how are people getting the help that they need to meet those deadlines? Think about how you're going to go forth and make that happen. And then what I want you to do, now that you have that idea in your head, take some time if you need more time to think about that. But when you have that in your head, sit down and implement that plan. Imagine how these things should be and what a good job or a good company should look like, what your organization should look like, and then go after it. Make that happen. And you have to first start with these qualities on the left here. You always want to be a good leader. So go ahead and, review these things here and then put that into action, and just see how much improvement will be made. Just how much better things will be just by starting with yourself and really deepening the qualities of a good leader and making that happen. If you don't have a vision right now for what you think your organization should look like, then just realize that sometimes having a vision, it takes work. You have to work for a vision. Sometimes you have to get inspiration. Sometimes, you may be listening to this and you may say, oh man, my job is just so terrible. I just lost hope. You don't have any hope. Hope is critical, and there's always hope. If you're still alive and you're still at that job, perhaps there is hope, but you can always make a difference. Just know that things may not go the way that you want them to, but you can always make a difference. If you're an employee listening to this, especially as I mentioned earlier, and you are not in what you would consider a leadership position, but you notice things that could improve within that company, then definitely do the same thing. I want you to imagine what all of these things look like. What do the what are the people doing? How can things improve? How can you make a difference? How can you help certain people? And then start doing that. And then start seeing yourself as a leader. And, start making these qualities on the left-hand side of the screen of a good leader, start making those a part of your personality, of your character. Start seeing yourself as someone who can make a difference, because you can. Imagination is important, and imagination is connected to your confidence. And that's why hope is so important. But you shouldn't have confidence in your company so much, but you should have confidence in the fact that you can make a difference. So when you have that confidence, you can imagine both that process and a result as well. And you can absolutely see your confidence grow. And that's what's going to happen when you start looking at the future and seeing what can I do to improve, these things that are not going bad, or these things that are going bad or poorly in my company, or things that can absolutely be improved on. Or maybe you even have a good company and you're listening to this and there are some things that you would like to improve on. Don't fix what isn't broken, but, there's probably some things that you can absolutely try to, make even stronger. So I hope that if you're listening to this, that this has helped you. Please leave a comment and let me know, what you thought about this. If you want me to explain something further, I can certainly do that. And I may make another video sometime soon about how you can have these qualities, how you can work on humility and resilience, how you can work on servant leadership and communication and integrity, and how you can be a team player, and how you can have that growth mindset, and how you can understand, what love is more deeply. Again, I may do a video on that. Just let me know if you want me to do that. If you're interested, then I will. I will get it out very quickly as well. So yeah, that is the conclusion of this video, and I hope that this video has inspired you and or helped you to be the strong leader that you have the potential to be. It is already inside of you. You just have to work at it and bring it out. It's good to imagine what life would be like, especially as a CEO or a manager. People are taking fewer sick days. The turnover rate is low. People are smiling. They're making jokes. They talk openly. They're helping one another. This is the way that life should be. So, go ahead and make that happen. Take care, guys.